don't even know where to start this disturbing story. What happened that night doesn't fit into any logical box. Since then, my hair has turned gray. Don't be surprised. Even though I'm only 24, I look like an old man now. That night left a mark on me that will stay until my dying day. It all started on that ill-fated evening when I was standing at the station with my bags, buying a ticket to Little Rock, Arkansas. The station was nearly empty, and outside a bitter wind was howling, biting through my clothes. I didn't want to go, but I had to. My grandmother lived there, and she'd passed away a week ago from a heart condition. I hadn't seen her in 3 years, and suddenly the neighbors called to give me the news. I'm her only heir, so I had to go claim her old, run-down place on the outskirts of the city. To keep it short, I bought the ticket and walked out onto the platform. My train was already waiting. There weren't many people, maybe 10 in total. Trains have been a part of my life since I was a kid. My mom worked for Amtrak her whole life as a lead attendant. I used to travel with her on long routes all the time. I loved the sound of the wheels, the smell of the upholstery, and the quiet buzz of the cafe car, where she'd sometimes let me hang out while she managed the inventory. My mom raised me alone. She couldn't leave me at home for a week at a time while she was on the cross-country lines, so I lived on the rails with her. But that's also where it ended. I was 17 when it happened. According to the police and witnesses, it was a freak accident. She was boarding the car as it started to pull away. The train suddenly jerked. She lost her footing, and she fell right into the gap. The wheels cut her clean in half. A horrific death. Now, every time I step into a coach car, I think of her. That night was no different. I found my seat. Number 21. The car was almost empty, and as soon as I sat down, we pulled out. I was glad for the quiet. At least I wouldn't have to deal with snoring strangers or loud tourists. I wasn't sleepy because I'd had too much coffee at the station. I just stared out the window at the black silhouettes of trees flying by. About 20 minutes later, a young attendant came through to check tickets and offered a complimentary snack. After she left, I grabbed a cigarette and stumbled toward the vestibule between cars, looking for a place to step off or just a bit of air. On the way, I saw that the door to the next car was wide open. I looked inside and realized the car was pitch black. No lights at all. I thought it was strange. Why would they hitch an empty, dark car to a night train? As I flicked my lighter, I saw a figure near the restroom area. It darted into the darkness so fast I barely caught it. I figured it was just a crew member checking the locks in the dark, so I went back. The lights in our car were so dim they might as well have been off. I was starting to drift off when the attendant came back and shook me awake. "Don't sleep, sir," she said, her voice sharp and surprisingly aggressive. I asked why, and she just whispered, "You can't sleep now, not here. We have to pass a certain stretch of track first. Just wait until we're through the dry flats." She looked terrified, her hands shaking as she adjusted her vest. I asked her about the dark car behind us, and she just snapped, "No one should be back there," and hurried away. Her behavior was completely different from when I first boarded. She went to the other passengers, whispering the same warning, but nobody took her seriously. I should have. I eventually fell asleep. I woke up about 3 hours later. The car was no longer empty. It was packed with figures in every seat. It was dead quiet, except for the wind and the wheels. I looked at the person in the seat across from me. He was curled in a ball, whispering something to the wall. Then he turned toward me, and my heart stopped. His upper body rotated, but his legs stayed glued to the seat, twisted like a broken toy. The fabric beneath him began to turn bright red with blood. He looked like a man, but I could feel he was a corpse. I bolted into the aisle and saw the true horror. An old woman a few rows up was spinning in circles, not on the floor, but hovering just above her seat, rotating rapidly under her coat. Another man had his mouth open so wide it looked like his jaw had been unhinged. No living human could open their mouth that far. The air turned cold, and the car itself began to transform. The walls started to rust and peel right before my eyes. The sleek panels were cracking and curling up. And then at the far end of the car, I saw it. It looked like a person, but it wasn't. It was naked, bone-thin and tall. Its neck was twisted 90 degrees to the side, and its nose was almost gone, just a tiny slit. But the hands? Each hand had 4 fingers, each nearly 2 feet long, dragging on the floor like skeletal claws. I slapped myself, screaming internally for it to be a dream, but it was reality. The creature covered the entire length of the car in a split second. It leaped at the glass door of the vestibule, pressing those long, spindly fingers against the pane, staring at me like I was nothing but meat. The thing started smashing the glass and trying to claw its way under the door. I didn't wait. I grabbed the emergency brake handle. The wheels screeched, and as the train slowed, I forced the side door open and leaped out into the dark Arkansas plains. I hit the ground hard, bruising my legs. But I didn't care about my bags. I ran into the brush. I must have run for 20 minutes before I collapsed. I woke up the next morning to an old man poking me with the barrel of a Remington. "Hey kid, you can't be sleeping here," he said. He was wearing tattered hunting gear and had a hawk perched on his shoulder. I told him I'd jumped from the train. He looked at me solemnly and asked, "Did you see the skinwalkers?" I just nodded. "Follow me," he said. "This is a bad stretch of land. They've been here for a long time. You can't sleep in these parts. Not in a house, not on a train, and definitely not on the ground. They prey on the sleepers because their will is weak. A few days ago, they took Piano Pete from the trailer park down the road. He had long fingers, you should have seen him. My blood ran cold. That was the creature I saw. Pete used to love watching the trains pass. The old man, Miller, took me to his shack and gave me some moonshine and salt pork. "You can sleep for an hour now," he said. "The sun is up. They only hunt in the dark. I'll watch the door." I laid down on his old spring bed and finally closed my eyes, but I knew I'd never truly rest again. I woke up to old man Miller shaking my shoulder. "Rise and shine, kid. The sun's high, and you need to move if you want to make it to the city in one piece," he rumbled. I sat up on the creaky spring bed, my head throbbing, and a foul aftertaste of that moonshine in my mouth. Memories of the night before hit me, and I shuddered. "Miller, what the hell was that on the train? Those things with the fingers?" I asked, praying it was just some bad trip. Miller sat down on a wooden stool and lit a hand-rolled cigarette. "Those, son, are the ones who fell asleep at the wrong time. This land, it's got a history. They say there were labor camps here way back. A lot of angry, restless souls buried in this dirt. Something opened up. Now, if you sleep here and your will is weak, they come for you. They take your soul and rewrite your body. You saw Pete, didn't you? Piano Pete. He got caught just like that. Now he wanders the tracks, clicking those fingers against windows, looking for anyone else whose eyes might be heavy. How many of them are there?" I felt a cold chill run down my spine. "Enough to make sure you're never safe. Just remember, as long as the sun is up, they're hiding in the shadows. Old mine shafts, cellars, crawl spaces. And once twilight hits, don't you dare close your eyes. I've got a stash of strong coffee here. Take it. The station is about 9 miles through the woods. If you make it before dark, you can catch the freight heading out. The crew on that line knows how to punch through this stretch of track." I gathered my things, and Miller shoved an old folding knife into my pocket. "For peace of mind," he winked. I stepped out of the shack. The woods looked normal, birds chirping, sun beating down, but I couldn't shake the feeling that behind every oak tree, Something was waiting for me to just blink a second too long. The hike was brutal. My legs were aching from the jump off the Amtrak, and fear was the only thing keeping me moving. About an hour in, I hit an old rusted spur line. And that's when I saw him. Sitting on a rusted rail was Pete. In the daylight, he looked even worse. His skin was gray, stretched tight over bone, and his fingers, long, jointed, impossible, were slowly tapping the grass like he was playing an invisible Steinway. He didn't see me, or he pretended not to. I froze, afraid to even breathe. Suddenly, his twisted neck snapped 90 degrees in my direction. There were no eyes, just empty sockets filled with black sludge. He made a sound like metal scraping glass and started to stand up. I didn't wait to see what happened next. I bolted, tearing through the brush, not even looking where I was going. Behind me, I could hear that horrific clack-clack, his fingers hitting each other as he moved. I burst into a clearing and saw the station, a derelict brick building with a single flickering light. And there, thank God, was a freight train idling. The engineer was already blowing the whistle. I lunged for the ladder of the last car just as the train lurched forward. Looking back at the edge of the tree line, I saw him. Pete was standing there watching the train leave, his long fingers moving in a slow, rhythmic wave. The car smelled of grain and dust. I huddled in the corner, my whole body shaking. "Don't sleep, don't sleep," I whispered to myself. Little Rock was close, but the ride felt like an eternity. Now I know for sure. In some places, sleep isn't rest. It's a death sentence. If you ever find yourself passing through the dry flats or these backwoods, drink coffee. Lots of it. And never, ever close your eyes. The train rhythmically thudded over the rail joints. I was huddled in the corner of a freight car, my hand white-knuckled around the folding knife Old Man Miller had given me. Sleep was a heavy shroud trying to pull me under. But I knew that if I let it take me, I'd never wake up again. I pulled out my thermos, shaking out the last drops of bitter cold coffee. It barely touched the exhaustion. The car was filled with mounds of grain that shifted and hissed every time the train swayed. And then I heard a different sound. A rustle that didn't belong to me. Out of the pitch-black corners of the car, shapes began to form. At first, I thought they were just bags of grain, but bags don't breathe. They were people, or what was left of them. They sat motionless, chins tucked to their chests. I froze. One of them slowly lifted its head. Its face was pale as chalk, and where the eyes should have been, there were only twin voids of black sludge. It didn't attack. It just watched. That's when it hit me. They were all asleep. But not a normal sleep. They were trapped inside the nightmare, their bodies hollowed out and possessed. "Are you still up?" A soft wheezing whisper hissed through the car. It was Piano Pete. I saw those impossibly long, four-jointed fingers slide through the gap in the heavy steel door. He didn't come in. He just ran his claws along the metal frame, tapping it like he was playing a grand piano. Soon you'll close your eyes too, and then we'll be family," he croaked. I lunged forward with Miller's knife and slashed at those fingers. There was no scream, only a sound like air escaping a punctured tire. The hand snapped back into the night. The train began to hiss and slow down. We were approaching the freight yards on the outskirts of Little Rock. Lights, blessed electric street lights, started flickering past the door, but the shadows inside the car were rising. They reached for me, their whispers growing into a deafening roar in my head. I threw myself at the door, slid it open, and tumbled out onto the gravel of the yard. I ran until my lungs felt like they were filled with glass, not stopping until I collapsed in the bright neon glow of a 24-hour diner. When I woke up in the county hospital, the sun was blindingly bright. The doctors talked about acute sleep deprivation and psychotic breaks brought on by exhaustion. I tried to tell them about Pete, about the skinwalkers on the train, about Old Man Miller. They just nodded with that look of professional pity. To them, I was just a kid who'd had a breakdown on the rails. But when I looked at my palm, I saw it. A faint, bruised imprint of a long, thin finger. A mark. Like I'd been tagged for later. Now I live in the city. I never turn off the lights. I took a job working the graveyard shift at a warehouse, and I only sleep during the day when the sun is at its peak. I know they're still out there stalking that stretch of the Amtrak line. Sometimes when the city noise dies down, I hear it. A faint, rhythmic on my window pane. It's Pete, playing his melody, waiting for the one night I'm too tired to keep my eyes open. Months had passed since I escaped that ghost train. I thought the city would be my sanctuary, that the neon lights of Little Rock and the constant hum of traffic would act as a shield. I was wrong. The creatures didn't stay behind on the tracks. They followed the scent of my fear. I started seeing them everywhere. In the reflections of store windows on Main Street, in the shadows of the subway tunnels, in the empty hallways of my office building. They weren't rushing. They were just waiting for me to hit my breaking point. One night, I stumbled back to my apartment after a double shift at the warehouse. I hadn't slept in nearly 48 hours. My eyes felt like they were filled with hot sand. I bolted every lock, drew the blackout curtains, and flipped on every lamp in the place. I sat on my couch, gripping a mug of black coffee, my knuckles white. Then the lights flickered. Once, twice, and then pitch black. The whole block had gone dark. In the dead silence of the apartment, I heard it. It wasn't outside. It was coming from the hallway, right inside my door. I reached for Miller's folding knife. "Get out! I'm awake! You hear me? I'm still awake!" I screamed into the void. But the only response was a soft, wheezing laugh. A figure stepped out of the gloom. But it wasn't Piano Pete. It was a woman in an old Amtrak uniform. My mother. Her face was exactly as it appeared in my nightmares. Torn clean down the middle and stitched back together with jagged, rusty wire. Her eyes were nothing but bottomless pits of oil. "Baby, you're so tired," she whispered, her voice a dry rasp. "Just close your eyes. Mama's here. We're all here." Behind her, dozens of shadows surged. Pete, the passengers from the coach car, the lost souls from the dry flats, all of them reaching out with those grotesque, four-jointed fingers. I realized then that this curse wasn't a place. It was a choice. They were the ones who had simply given up. Right then, Old Man Miller's words about Will finally made sense. I didn't try to fight them with the knife. I closed my eyes, not to sleep, but to focus. I visualized a white-hot light, a roar of pure defiance, a fire that they couldn't touch. I screamed with everything I had left, pouring all my rage and will to live into one single shout. When I opened my eyes, the power was back on. The apartment was flooded with light. The things were gone, but the wallpaper was shredded with deep, jagged claw marks. I realized running was over. I couldn't be the prey anymore. I had to be the hunter. I sought out others, people like me who had seen the long fingers and survived. We formed a group. We don't sleep at night. We patrol the streets, watching over the exhausted, the homeless, the night shift workers, anyone on the verge of nodding off. We call ourselves the Watchmen. If you're walking home late at night and you see someone with a thermos and eyes that look like they've seen the end of the world, that's one of us. We guard the border while you sleep. But remember, never let your guard down. Because they are always there, just out of sight. And they really, really want you to just take a nap.